Chapter 22. The mirror? Philip said, a look of confusion on his face. But the mirror was destroyed. The wolf growled, bared his teeth. He was intimidating, even in his human form. Not destroyed, little prince, the wolf said. Only broken. Without the crown, the mirror is useless. With it, we will have the Wicked Queen's most powerful weapon in our paws. But we cannot restore the mirror, Philip pleaded. There must be a way to find May's grandmother without unleashing its power. The wolf sneered. Do you know where the child's grandmother is? Philip shook his head. Of course not, he said. But I do know what evil the mirror wrought during the war. We have to ask ourselves if it is worth the price. Once again, the wolf's teeth came out. I would do anything to save my queen, little prince. He took a step forward, his eyes locked on the prince. And I will do so whether I have your approval or not. May quickly stepped between them, raising her hands to hold off any violence. I agree with the Wolf King, Philip, she said. Philip's face fell. But, Princess, you do not know... She smiled a very small smile. You're right, she said. And I don't care. All I want is to find my grandmother, and quick. You think the Wicked Queen put her up in a nice room and is keeping her comfortable? I would not think so, Princess, Philip said sadly. That's right, May said. So we find the mirror as soon as possible, and we use it. She turned to the wolf. And after we find my grandmother, then we destroy the mirror. Deal? The wolf smiled. I would have it no other way, Princess. So where is the mirror? Jack asked. How do we find it? One of the evil one's minions, the Red Hood, stole the mirror after the crown was removed, the wolf said. Unfortunately, the Hood's cloak for which she is named is magical. It keeps her invisible to my senses, or else I would have found her long ago. However, there might be another way to track her now. He reached his hand out toward May, palm up. The princess stared at his hand for a second, then realization dawned. Oh, she said, and slowly removed her necklace, placing it into the wolf's outstretched hand. The wolf brought it to his nose and inhaled deeply. His eyes closed halfway, just as they had been when he tasted Jack's and Philip's blood in wolf form, and he paused for a moment. Then the wolf turned his face up towards the ceiling of dead trees, his mouth hanging open. As he did, a strong wind rose from all around them, pushing Jack, May, and Philip back against the trees. Within seconds, though, the wind stopped and the wolf lowered his head. He was smiling. Your necklace, princess, he said, and handed it back to her. So, do you know where the mirror is? Jack asked. The wolf nodded slowly. I know which direction it is in. I will take you there. We have a little time, Philip said. We should take the quickest route possible. The wolf laughed. Strangely enough, his laugh was creepier than his growl. I will carry you, he said simply. I must do so if you wish to leave the Black Forest. Already the trees hunger for human blood. They speak to me, beg me to leave you with them. He smiled almost evilly. Don't make me regret my decision. At that, Jack, Philip, and May all quickly took a step away from the nearest trees. The fur-covered man shimmered again in the light of the sword and morphed back into the enormous monster of a wolf. The animal's red eyes opened, then glared at the three of them. Climb onto my back, he growled. There is little time to waste. Jack took a step back. This doesn't really seem like the best idea, all things considered. What? May said, her tone mocking. Don't tell me you're afraid of the big bad wolf, Jack. Philip forced a laugh. Yes, Jack, he said. What is there to fear? He's an ally of Snow White. He will keep us safe. As he spoke, the prince slowly inched up next to the animal. He put one hand on the beast's fur, then took a deep breath, then vaulted onto the wolf's back. All three of them braced themselves, but the wolf didn't react at all. Ah, see? Philip said with a relieved smile. There is nothing to fret about. Come, princess, I shall assist you. May smiled cruelly at Jack. It's nice to have a big, brave man along, isn't it? You know, someone dependable. With that, she turned and walked over to the wolf's side, where Philip helped pull her up. After the two of them were seated, the wolf turned his gaze to Jack. Well, boy, he growled, what are you waiting for? I won't hurt you. Jack swallowed hard. I'd like to believe that. Get on! The wolf roared, then leapt forward, landing just in front of Jack, his teeth only inches from Jack's face. The wolf's breath puffed out of his nostrils, sending Jack's hair flying. Okay, but only because you asked nicely, Jack said, sliding his sword into his scabbard and climbing up behind May. I have a bad feeling about this, he told her. You have a bad feeling about everything, she sent back. Jack started to respond, but before he could, the wolf leapt forward, sending them all airborne. All three grabbed fur and managed to keep themselves on the wolf's back as he loped off into the woods. Wind and branches flew by as the wolf ran, threatening to knock them all off the wolf's back if they didn't lean forward and hold on for dear life. Between the howling wind and their faces being pushed into each other's backs, all conversation was effectively cut off. Riding the wolf was nothing like riding a horse had been. While Samson had a rhythmic gait, the wolf's loping seemed to change every few seconds as he adjusted his stride for the terrain. Sometimes they'd be just about shaken off the perch from a short tear through a clearing, only for the wolf to leap forward at other times, taking to the air like an enormous furry bird, the wind just about pushing each of them right off his back. If Philip hadn't locked his arms around the wolf's neck, with May holding on to him and Jack holding on to May, all three would have fallen off after the first leap. Gradually, Jack began to notice that the trees rushing by on either side looked different. Instead of black dead wood, the trees now had leaves. Brown living branches clawed at them as the wolf ran. Eventually, Jack started to see birds and even some animals, magical and otherwise, in the underbush, a sure sign that they'd left the black forest behind. The wolf loped on for what seemed like days. In actuality, it wasn't more than one night, as when Jack was about to yell to the wolf that they needed a break, he saw the sunrise poking through the trees up ahead. The sunlight turned out to be a small clearing. Jack barely noticed, though. He was so intent on the natural sunlight after seeing everything by the glow of the night sword. In fact, he was so focused on the sunlight that he didn't realize the wolf had abruptly screeched to a halt. While May and Philip managed to stay on the wolf, Jack flew off to land in the dirt, skidding to stop just before the clearing, his sword shooting off his back to land even farther away. Shh! May shushed from behind him, still safely mounted. You could be a little more quiet, she laughed softly, then stuck out her tongue at him. The wolf let out a sound that sounded eerily like a chuckle. Even Philip had a smile on his face as he helped make it down off the wolf's back. Jack sighed, quietly promising to wipe the dirt on his clothes all over the others at the first opportunity, then joined May, Philip, and the wolf at the edge of the forest to see what they'd found. With one of the Wicked Queen's minions, anything could be waiting for them.